Hello and welcome back to TAM Training. In the next few sessions, we're going to be looking at latte art, but first a quick recap on the fundamentals. Now, first of all, we have to make sure we have a good shot of espresso, and if you haven't got that packed down, I suggest going back and learning how to manage a grinder and set up a recipe. Second, obviously, is the milk. If you're doing this as a group activity, you've got a way of practicing milk, practicing your froth, and not waste any milk at all. That is water and just dish soap or soap. So you just want to make sure you put a little bit in, not too much. Make it look like that. When I go to steam it, it gives me the same consistency as milk. So any bubbles that pop up in this jug will pop up if you steamed it with milk. Now the third fundamental is how to hold your cup. Always make sure your hand is under the cup and not holding the handle, because customers touch this, and if you have dirty hands, as baristas do, you can dirty the handle and probably wouldn't like that as a customer. Make sure it's on an angle and that the handle of the cup is facing to the left. What you want to practice is pouring and when to get your cup to an even surface. This is one of the hardest things to master, as you will spill a fair bit of cups of coffee, but that is natural. You have to before you learn it. Now, after you've practiced this a few times and you think you've got it all pretty good, all down packed, you can start looking at the first piece of art, which is the heart. So we'll start off the heart by looking at which points we're gonna use milk and which points we're gonna use froth, how to move your jug, and when to pour when. So first of all, obviously have your cup on an angle, and this will be your coffee. Now, step number one is to swirl your cup so it breaks the crema in your coffee, so your milk hitting the coffee doesn't have a negative contrast to it. You'll have to practice this a few times. I still spill it sometimes, it's a natural thing. Now, first of all, you want to hold your jug high and you want to start pouring. By having it high, and I'll show you what high is later on in the video, you're only pouring milk and not froth, so it doesn't give you a bad contrast. And what you don't want to do is mix in, mix in, mix in, mix in, covering any white spots that appear in your coffee canvas. You want a nice brown color around the cup and not white spots. So for the heart, you want to do this process until you reach the halfway, until your milk is at the edge of your cup. On this point, you're going to move your jug from up high to really close to the cup in the center of your cup. Keep in mind that a lot of these fundamentals are the same throughout our next latte arts. And you'll see this pattern go through as we go along. When your jug reaches this level, you want to start by just pouring some froth and not doing anything until you see a nice base create of foam. When it says base create, you want to start wiggling. A nice thing to practice because it'll help you later on in your latte art journey. So you want to start with froth, create a base, wiggle, 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 and you kind of want to go this direction while you're wiggling until you're happy with the size of the art. Now, the art, like most arts, should fill in most of the cup and have brown on the outside and white on the inside. And when you're happy with the size of it, what you want to do with your jug is go from here back to the number one spot and cut through. Now, if you cut through whilst having your jug here, you're cutting through with foam and you ruin your picture. But if you bring your jug back up, you'll cut it through with milk and it'll cut through the art perfectly and make your fish look quite nice. A few things that's going to happen when you start practicing this is you probably won't get used to lifting it up and cutting through. Or when you do cut through, you'll be spilling some milk over your cup. And that's just stuff that happens, and you got to keep working at it until you get perfection. Now to the practical side. So after you've swirled your espresso, you want to keep stirring your milk so it doesn't separate. And then we're starting. So I'll start high, Mix in, mix in, mix in, mix in. And we're about halfway full. I'm gonna go in the foam, wiggle, lift up, and cut through. And that is the heart. Okay, and you wanna do this until you're completely comfortable with every step of the way, from mixing the milk to pouring and to wiggling. Wiggling is probably a big one, or judging how much froth is entering your cup. Until you're comfortable, you can move on. If you're not, keep smashing the heart until you can take the next step. And when you're really confident, you can start pouring hearts that look like this. All right, now that you got the heart mastered, it's time for the tulip. The tulip is one of the most popular or common arts. It's a gateway to learn the next step of art. So yeah, let's get right to it. So to start up with, we're gonna practice a 3-stack tulip, and at the end of the video, I'll show you what different stacks look like. So to start off with, same as the heart, you're gonna have your jug up high, mix the crema of the coffee, keep mixing your milk, and pouring. Mix in, mix in, mix in until you cover all the white spots of your coffee canvas, until you're a quarter of the way full. With the heart, it was a halfway full. Tulip, let's go with a quarter full. Next step is lower your jug to the center of the cup, and you want to start it off. So starting off by pouring some foam into your cup until you're happy with the size. Now remember that with the tulip, the first base will have to be the biggest. It's kind of like the biggest has to hug the second biggest, to the third biggest, to the fourth, and so on, so on, so on. So make sure you have a nice big base to start up with. Now, as you're pouring foam, this will be the hardest thing to master when you're working with the tulip. As you're pouring with foam and you're happy with the size, you want to lift your jug up. Now, what people usually do is lift it up, but lift it up too much. If you lift it up high, your foam will come to the back of the jug, and when you go to pour, milk will come out and ruin your picture. So practice maybe with the soap trick to do little petite cuts. So after the first one, you want to come back to the center of the cup again and basically do the same thing, but to have it a little bit smaller than the first one. And when you're happy with it, you cut. Now, since we're only starting with a 3-stack, we're going to the second hardest thing to master with the tulip, and it is to bring your jug to the edge of the cup and holding it down to create the last piece of the puzzle. So you want to create a head that's big enough to see, because if it's not big enough and you got to cut through, while you cut through, the head will disappear and you only have a 2-stack. You want to make sure that it's nice and big, but not too big to outdo your second blob. When you're happy with the size, you want to go up with your jug whilst pouring milk. So you're not stopping, you're not cutting, you are going from foam to milk directly, and it's quite a hard thing to master. So once again, practice with the soap until you're comfortable, until you're confident, and then go with milk. And you want to bring it up to the same level as when we started. And when you are happy, you want to cut through. You can either cut through until you reach the last base, or you can come through to after the last base. The only thing is, when you're doing this one, you're just gonna have to watch out to not spill milk over your cup. All right, now to pour the tulip. So always remember, mix in your milk, mix the coffee, break the crema, and we're starting off high, and we are mixing in, mixing in, mixing in. Now we are a quarter of the way up, done. So we start in the middle with the foam. I'm happy with that size, so I'm gonna cut. Then back to the middle with foam, I'm happy, cut. I'm gonna come to the edge of the cup, and I'm happy with the head, go up without stopping your pour and cut through. So with your first few goes, this is what you should aim for, and we're about to show you what your final picture should look like. Okay, and this is what your tulip should look like after a bit of practice. Now on this one, My last head didn't come out quite right, and that's what I mean by being happy with the size of your last head. If you see here, it's a little bit faded away. On these next steps, I've stacked on more than the 3. And on my first 2, and you can even keep going, you can start to practice your wiggle. It'll make your tulip bases bigger, so you can stack more and make it look a little bit better. So yeah, good luck.